Hello, everyone. We will be starting in just a moment. I am enabling public permissions on Facebook. And unfortunately, I can't do that until I'm already live. So give me just a second, you all. We'll be getting started. Excited about tonight. We made it. Let's see. Edit privacy. Should be public. All right. Hopefully, everyone is able to see and hear me well tonight. Please let me know if the audio is low or if you hear an echo at all. Last week we had quite an echo, but we made it through. And from what I could hear, you were still able to hear pretty well. We had a really rich conversation last week. We had a guest host, Miss Helena, who is a part of our book club. She's one of our book club members, and she'll be sharing briefly at the very beginning of this. So we'll be bringing her on in just a second. But now that it looks like we are good, let me check my Facebook and YouTube comments. Um, it looks like we're good. Um, Let me start from the beginning. Good evening, everyone. Tonight is our closing session of the Creative Scholar Book Club for the most recent book we've been reading, which is All About Love by Bell Hooks. Just in case you've never seen me before, if you're watching this public and we're not friends on Facebook or YouTube, that would be the only way you've never seen me before. But just in case, I'm Danetta, also known as Dr. Danetta, and I'm the host of the Creative Scholar Book Club and podcast. And just a little bit about the Creative Scholar. We usually are going to be reading or finding interest in something that is relative to theology, psychology, and or creativity. With the book club, because books, literature are a huge form of creativity, the topics could range from so many things. It's literally a book club where we read books of interest, books that I have been interested in or read before, or if someone has recommended, books that book club members recommend, and books that people who maybe are interested in being members of the book club recommend. So if you've not joined us yet, I would love for you to join the Facebook group here on Facebook. It is free. It For the past three books that we have read has been open. So that means we are a book club. We have actual members who have joined, but the book club page has been open to the public. But this is the last book where it will be open. And I waited a few books because with the way Facebook has it arranged, you have to, once it becomes private, it cannot be open again, which is okay. But I wanted to give people a chance to really see what we're about, to see some of the range of topics we've talked about in some of the books that we've read. But we're just getting started. And so I'm really excited about the fact that we are finishing up All About Love, which is a book that has been so helpful, very intriguing, very challenging. These last couple of chapters, I will say one in particular, and we'll get there, have made me think like if you are a believer and you're reading a lot of different types of books, a lot of different genres by a lot of different authors of a lot of different faiths, make sure you're reading your Bible. I was admonished as I was reading through. Make sure of all of the things you're reading, make sure you're reading your Bible. Because there were some things that I was just like, ooh, this week I need to go back and double check some facts. I had to do a little fact checking with some of the stuff that I read, even though it was, a great read, very interesting. But we'll get to that. But join the book club if you haven't yet. We will continue to stream the book chats, most of them on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you're not ready to join yet, I still love for you to continue to watch and interact with us. Um, there are times where we have a Zoom where only members are shared the link because there are things we want to discuss about the book. Um, and there are times when we will have Zooms and lives, but in order to make sure you don't miss out on anything, join the book club. You can actually join the group here on Facebook, or you can sign up for my Substack, which I will post a link for that a little later if you've never seen it before. It is on the book club page, which is still open tonight. That's the other way you can join the book club if you're someone who doesn't necessarily prefer to be on social media, but you just happen to see this tonight. So, those are the preliminaries. This is our last night, and we're discussing several chapters. So, I do want to jump right in. But one of the things that I'm excited about doing tonight and doing more in the future with book club members and guests that we will have is to allow authors, people who have actually written and published books, to share about their book and be able to, share with you a little bit about their process or their journey and just invite you to purchase their book and read their book. And that's what we're going to be doing tonight with Miss Helena, who has been a faithful member of the Creative Scholar Book Club, and just many endeavors that encourage, uplift, and help other people. So I'm going to turn it over to her and give her a couple minutes to share with you a book that we'd love for you to check out that she is the author of. And just whatever you want to share, Miss Helena, about yourself and your author journey, the floor is all yours. Give me just a second. I'm going to switch over to you now. All right. Let's see. You're in my view now, so you should be able to share. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
You're on. We see
Hi,
you live.
everybody. My name is Helena. Okay. Um, Hi, everybody. Helena, Miss Helena, and I'm just happy to be here. Um,
Can y'all hear Miss Helena there? Are y'all able to hear her?
okay, so I'm
Let
gonna
me know
take
if
this
you're
out of
able
my
to
ear
hear
so I
her.
don't hear myself twice. But I'm Miss Helena, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm enjoying the book club very much. And I encourage everyone to come on to the Creative Scholar Book Club. It is awesome. We've been reading some really great books. And who knows, maybe one day we'll read 40 Moments for Your Soul. I am the author of 40 Moments for Your Soul. Yes, I have a shirt on that says 40 Moments for Your Soul. Hello, hello for the 40 Moments for Your Soul merch. um, but the I'll tell you it wasn't like when I was growing up, I said, when I grow up, I want to be an author. That's not how it was. Um, there was just a point in my life where it's coming up on 8 years ago now that I would just be minding my business, and I feel like God was downloading um, some thoughts into me, and I would just pick up paper, notebook, whatever was near me, and I would just start writing down. And it took me a while to release it because I feel like, I didn't want to just release anything. So I took my time, in sorting through what I had. And, then I just, some people say they felt like a release. I guess I kind of heard inside myself, like, it's okay. It's okay. You can release it. And so, I'm just going to read a couple of them, but the 40 Moments for Your Soul, it can be found on Amazon, wherever books are sold. 40 Moments for Your Soul by Helena Robinson. And you Google that, you should be able to find me anywhere books are sold, everywhere. Goodreads, everybody, Amazon, everybody, Barnes and Noble, everybody. It's an ebook only. And so the purpose really for the book for me was that I wanted to leave a legacy. And so my third grandchild is gonna soon I'll be meeting her, and um I have something to leave, for her to read someday. And so That's basically really, I just wanted to leave a legacy. And so like I said, I'm going to read a couple, but I've gotten a lot of different reactions from the book. Oh, as a matter of fact, I'm believing God that this year, 1 million downloads. No more safe prayers. I'm praying boldly and putting it out there. I just spoke it. I'm believing God for 1 million downloads. And so I put it out there. That's what I'm believing for. And not because just to say that, I spoke it and it is an uplifting book and it is encouraging and it will have you thinking about some things. I've had all kind of reactions. People said they laughed, they cried. So uh I don't want to belabor, but it's an inspirational book. It's an ebook. It's more thought of as a poetry type of book. And one of the ones that I want to read, one of the moments, because it's called 40 Moments for Your Soul. So there's 40 moments in the book. I guess people would say 40 chapters, but it's not. It's a really quick read, but it's a meaningful read. And as far as like I know my brain, I'm thinking about things as I'm talking, is that because I don't have notes, I don't really like to deal with notes and stuff like that. Whatever comes, I just share. As far as the publishing journey, I'm glad I chose Redemption Press. They help indie writers. So they help you self-publish and things like that. And mine was done in a very professional manner. That was a big concern of mine. I've seen a lot of self-publishing that maybe should have went to editing and all that kind of stuff. And so I didn't want that. I wanted to at least put out something in excellence. So I'm glad I went the professional route and I went with Redemption Press. That's who my publisher is of this particular book. And I have another book that is in the works. It's going to be more of a short stories type of book. So, okay. I'm going to read just two, very short. The two of the moments in the 40 Moments for Your Soul ebook. Again, it's 40 moments, 40 moments of your soul. So let's see, 40 moments for your soul. Excuse me. So number 22, it says, do you know him? I'm talking about Genesis 1:1 God. I am a believer in Genesis 1:1 God. So it's God-based, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So 40 moments for your soul, number 22 is called Do You Know Him? And it reads, do you know him? He knows how many hairs are on your head. Do you know him? He knew you before you were being formed in your mama's womb. Do you know him? He knows your end from your beginning. Do you know him? He has a plan for your life. Do you know him? He loved you so much, he gave his son's life in exchange for your sins. Do you know him? He wants to be your best friend. Do you know him? He's knocking at the door of your heart. Do you know him? What are you waiting for? Open the door and let him in. Now get to know him. Introduce yourself. Don't be shy. And I'm a very personable, approachable person. And I feel like Genesis 1:1 God is the same. We come to him in reverence and respect, but he's approachable, you know. And so, yeah. Do you know him? I pray you get to know him. And I'm going to read the last one. It's number 40 in my ebook, in our ebook, I always say, because I believe God helped me to write this. I didn't write this by myself. Like I said, it's not something that I planned. it it kind of happened. Number 40 is called 40 Moments for Your Soul, the last one. There are times in our lives when we may have thought we were not going to make it. We all have moments. As long as we don't lose hope, we will make it. We will get through whatever it is we may be going through. How can I be so sure? You're reading this, that's how. The ability to step back and take a look at what is really happening between the lines takes practice, lots of practice. There is a point in life where we realize everything we are and not what we do rests on our Creator. May 40 Moments for Your Soul lead you to God, the Creator, of heaven and earth. So I pray that those two ministered to you, spoke to you, encourage you in some type of way. And that's basically it. I mean, maybe Danetta's gonna put a link or something, I don't know, anywhere. But I'm in Substack as well. And like I said, all um wherever books are found, that's where you can find 40 Moments for Your Soul. That's another reason why it's a good idea to go with a professional publisher if you want your work to get out there. Okay, I hope that was okay.
Oh, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Miss Helena. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing a little bit from your actual for actually reading some of it to us tonight. So super appreciate that, and I hope you all will go to Amazon and purchase 40 Moments for Your Soul. We will make sure that we put the links so that you're able to purchase. As a matter of fact, at some point within the next couple of minutes, once we get into the discussion, and when Miss Helena is sharing maybe some of her insight, I'll take a moment and pop that link in there. I actually should have had the link already so that I could put it in the description, but I didn't realize. As you guys can tell, I've used the streaming setup before when I did the season one of the podcast. But every week we are adding new things and using new, um, I guess, features that the streaming service is capable of. And I'm seeing all these new things that I'm doing as I'm doing it. I didn't realize that I could comment on all of the platforms at one time to be able to talk to everyone. So I'm learning some new things. I will pop that info in as we go. And another reason why you should absolutely join the book club group in Facebook. It's a really cool group. Listen, everybody's really laid back. Everyone is busy. We all have diverse lives that we're living. And so I do not flood the group with asks or things for you to do, but I do share things that will be there when you want to read it. So one of the things that will be there is the link to Miss Helena's book, and others of our book club members that want to share things that they've authored. So thank you so much for sharing. I have questions for you, more questions for you about the book. So what we'll do, maybe while we are on break from actually reading a book at some point in the next couple of weeks or so, you all will see. I'll make sure that I share once Miss Helena's interview for the actual podcast goes live, because we'll dig in a little bit to her process. I'm so happy that she shared a little bit about the fact that she had the book for a while and was finally able to come to the point of releasing it. I believe that's something that a lot of us um, deal with in different ways when God gives us things that are going to especially be a blessing to others, and even be a blessing to us in the doing of it and in the insight that He gives us. Sometimes we do struggle with the timing. Sometimes we do hold on to things until we believe God has released us to do it, and that's a good thing. Um, but we also know a lot of times we also struggle with. For some of us, I know I have been the poster child for it many times, being a perfectionist, or just being so thoughtful and creative with something that, like, it's almost perfect. It's always almost perfect because there's always something that you could do or something that you could change. And so, for those who are aspiring authors, or for those who absolutely analysis paralysis sometimes, for those who are aspiring authors, or those who have authored books before, and that second book is just you going through that process again, it's great for us to hear from each other on the process and the journey, and it's a great opportunity to support one another and to patronize each other's businesses and purchase each other's books. So go ahead and purchase 40 Moments for Your Soul by Miss Helena. Thank you so much again, Miss Helena, and we look forward to hearing more from you tonight. As we will jump in, we are discussing the last 5 chapters of All About Love. It sounds like a lot, but I believe we're going to get through this tonight in a reasonable amount of time. And that last chapter, especially, probably won't take us very long to talk through. So I'm going to go ahead and flip to chapter 9, which is the first chapter we're discussing tonight. And it's so funny. Throughout the day today, I was thinking, it came to my mind multiple times today that I can't wait when we get finished with this book to message my cousin. My cousin, uh, Keith. We talked about this book like 2 years ago. And I had the book and I had started reading it. And if I'm not mistaken, he had already read it. And, he kept asking me, had I finished it, put it down. Picked it up a year later, started it again. And he asked me, have you finished it? And I was like, I'm almost done. And he was like, yeah, I heard that before. I cannot wait until after we get off of here tonight. I am going to message him and say, guess what? I finally finished All About Love. He's going to be proud. He's going to be proud of me, and I can't wait for us to talk about the book. And that was it just tickled me because, throughout the book, we've talked about just familiar ties. We've talked about friendship. We've talked about community. And we talked about all of the ways that we express love, care, and just regard for one another. And there's just so many different ways that we do that. So many different ways that as we learn ourselves and we learn to, you know, be attuned in a healthy way to others, that just those small things, those small gestures, things that, a person might think you don't remember or you're not thinking of or that it didn't mean anything. It's amazing how much those small things mean. So let's go ahead and go to chapter 9. And chapter 9 is called Mutuality, the Heart of Love. And just like last week, if you don't mind, Miss Helena, I am going to flip over to you first and let you tell me what your thoughts are, on this chapter and share some of your quotes, and we can go back and forth. If there is anyone else who read and wants to share with us, I have the chat up in front of me for YouTube and Facebook. I really want to know what you enjoyed from chapter 9. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to you, Miss Helena. It's all yours. You should be good to go.
Okay. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully. And
Yep,
believe it or not, I have this large
yep,
section.
we can.
Is it on? Yeah, it's on page 181. I think this is still chapter 9. Um, okay. Okay. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. And yeah, I think it is. This has got to be chapter 9, where she talks about. I have this big section, so it must have really stood out for me. Um, Page 181, she says, I learned that we may meet a true love and that our loves may be transformed by such an encounter, even when it does not lead to sexual pleasure, committed bonding, or even sustained contact. The myth of true love, that fairy tale vision of two souls who meet, join, and live happily ever after, is the stuff of childhood fantasy. Yet many of us, female and male, carry these fantasies into adulthood and are unable to cope with the reality of what it means either to have an intense, life altering connection that will not lead to an ongoing relationship or to be in a relationship. True love does not always lead to happily ever after. And even when it does, sustaining love still takes work. So I remember being in conversation with someone when I said, that marriage is work. And then she was like, I don't see that. And it's so funny, like maybe a couple years after that, she changed that story. But yeah, what stuck out for me is the intentionality, I think, how we have to intentionally nurture one another. It has to be a mutual intentionality. That's what I got, I believe, from chapter 9 here. And yeah, I think that's the thing, that romance, sweet love, I grew up watching a lot of TV, so all that the romance stuff, that I thought was gonna happen when I became an adult. And no, it didn't happen like it was shown to us on mass media, on TV, in the movies or whatever. But yeah, so yeah, the chapter title is good. Romance and sweet love. There's a difference between romance and true love. So yeah, that's what stuck out for me in chapter 9. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. Over to you. Oh, the page. That was page, I'm sorry.
Yes, for sure.
That
Well,
was
that was,
that
I
big
believe you
section that I read.
you must have
Page,
given
hold on.
us a little bit maybe
Uh,
from chapter
hold on.
10, but that, which is fine.
Yeah,
I
it
believe
was,
the
that was,
sweet
that
love
was, that
chapter was
was. Maybe
chapter,
that
was that
wasn't
chapter 10?
chapter 9, but that
Romance
big
Sweet
whole,
Love was
no,
chapter 10.
181, page 181.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
cool though.
that's
It's
chapter
okay.
9. I think it is.
Um,
Page 181. Oh, that's
okay.
chapter 10. Sorry. But that was a big section, and I thought that was chapter 9, but that was actually chapter 10, where yeah, romance, sweet love. Sorry about that. We're in chapter 9, right?
All right. If you want, I can come back to you so we can hear your chapter 9. Do you have any from chapter 9, or did you want to skip over that one?
Okay. No, no, no. Let's see. Uh, I didn't have a lot in chapter 9 highlighted. Oh, I did. Care and respect. Yeah, 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 yeah. In chapter, yeah, chapter 9, mutuality, the heart of love. Um, it's true that we're brought up a certain way. Like, I think males and females are brought up a certain way, how to what's expected, or what society expects us, how they expect us to be. So the nurturing thing and the caring, the being empathetic and how to listen and all that, like it seems like females are taught to be that way, but males don't have to be. They just have to receive. I don't know. So that was something I think she pointed out in here. She talked about choosing to be honest is the first step. That's page 157. Choosing to be honest is the first step in the process of love. I thought that was really good. She talked about communication. Everybody talks about communication, how if there's a communication breakdown, then pretty much, the relationship is not going to go very well. And listening to the voice of our own hearts, as well as, our inner voice. We need to listen. So yeah, those were a couple of the takeaways. She uses a few things in here I think we'll be familiar with in scripture, like weeping may endure for a night, but joy will come in the morning, on page 160. That she referenced. So here and there, you can see that she had some Christian background, and she'll throw in things here and there. But like Janetta says, you have to fact check to make sure that some of this is, yeah. The labor of love is futile only when the men in question refuse to awaken. That's page 160. Um, and they refuse to awaken, refuse growth. At this point, it is a gesture of self-love for women to break their commitment and move on. So yeah, there's this There's a word, right? It'll come to me. Holy Ghost will bring it to my attention, but remembrance. But there's this word, that where women are expected to be one way and men to be another. So yeah, that's pretty much, yeah. In order to get free, the proper love and love properly, it has to be a mutual. Like it can't no 50-50s, like everybody 100%, 100%. So okay.
All right. Thank you so much for those. Those were some of the ones that you mentioned, are some of the ones that I have as well. Um, let's see. Yeah, chapter I had a lot of highlights in chapter 9. Um, the mutuality part of it, she definitely addressed. One of the things that stuck out to me, similar to some of the ones that you were saying, Miss Helena, is how she talks about how men and women are socialized differently when it comes to the expression of feelings, and how with that, it there's a lot of distress oftentimes in relationships when we can't find that common ground. One of the ones that she said that really stuck out for me was let's see what page. Page 157 too. This one stuck out. We cannot learn to communicate deeply until we learn to listen to each other, but also to ourselves and to God. So I was like, because we often hear like, oh, um, a person may feel like they're a good listener because they listen well to other people. But sometimes, we may listen well to other people, but not really do a good job of sitting with what is happening within, or addressing our concerns. Sometimes under the guise of being a peacemaker, sometimes under the guise of being a people pleaser, sometimes under the guise of not recognizing emotional neglect as a form of abuse. And that can go both ways. A lot of times when we mention the abuse factor, people get really up in arms because they feel like we label things as abuse that are not. But neglect is a form of abuse, and neglect in an emotional sense is basically psychological abuse, or like she has labeled it intimate terrorism in a way, because the inner man, although it may not be touched in neglect, I mean the outer man may not be touched in a space of neglect, but the inner man is damaged when you are unheard and unseen consistently, intentionally, and perpetually. So I like that she addressed, basically looking at the problem and not looking at the root of the problem and not just the problem. The root of the problem is not, you know, the communication thing. Only the root of the communication problem, a part of it, if you're looking at it just from a psychological or a social, a way of looking at it like in a social type of way and not just spiritual, you will say, oh, we're socialized. Women, obviously, we talk more, we process differently, and it's okay. We're socialized that it is okay for women to express and not necessarily men. So, and I think what I love about reading through this, as a person who is a believer in Christ, um, is that I love that these ideas are brought out, and at the same time knowing the spiritual aspect, or at least having being familiar with the spiritual aspect, and being able to kind of in my mind see like certain things that she may mention, more in a psychological sense, or the study of the mind in the way we think, but knowing that like, oh yeah, this is deep in some other ways and in some spiritual ways. But I love how she brings it out, about the communication thing. um One of the ones that I have several stars by for chapter 9 is this one. She said when we face pain in relationships on page 159, our first response is often to sever bonds rather than to maintain commitment. And then she goes down and says when conflict arises within us or between us and other individuals, when we walk on love's path, it is disheartening, especially when we cannot easily right our difficulties. In the case of romantic relationships, many people fear getting trapped in a bond that is not working. So they flee at the onset of conflict, or they self indulgently create unnecessary conflict as a way to avoid commitment. They flee from love before they feel its grace. Pain may be the threshold they must cross to partake of love's bliss. Running from the pain, they never know the fullness of love's pleasure. So, and I like that. I won't try to read every place where she did it, but I like that she always makes sure to differentiate between staying and doing the work and going through the discomfort. She always differentiated between that and staying in abuse. And it's kind of like she's very clear on that. So I really like that. And there's a place where her quote, I won't look for the quote or try to read all of them, but there's one where she basically said, in a situation of true love, if you do literally love someone based on the definition that was set at the very beginning, you are about the business of enhancing or contributing to, or your best regard for them is their spiritual well being. If you are in a situation of abuse, the most loving thing you can do for that self in your person is to remove yourself. So I like that she really shows, she always comes around right when it seems like, oh, well, you don't want to tell people to stay through pain because you don't want people to think that you're promoting staying in an abusive situation. She's just talking about the pain of change, the pain of humbling yourself, the pain of learning that maybe you don't, or maybe you aren't the best communicator, or maybe you don't know all that you think you know about this. So I thought that was great. But we'll move on to chapter 10, which you shared a little bit about Miss Helena for chapter 10. I'll share a few quotes, but before we flip over to 11, please let me know if there's any other ones that you want to share, because I would definitely love to hear your feedback on that. Also, for those of you who are not on camera, we still want to see and hear your favorite quotes. So I am checking these comments. And even if we move on to another chapter and your quote is from another chapter, just drop it in the comments, put your page number there. If you don't have a page number, but you just have a piece of a quote that you want us to check out, just write it in the comments because this is interactive, is for you as well. All right, moving on to chapter 10, Sweet Love. She did talk about the romance aspect, and again, like how we've been socialized in our country to um, basically seek romance and not love, and prefer one kind of over the other, thinking that one is the other kind of thing. In this chapter, on page 173, please let me know if I am requoting one that you said already. But this is one. Two of them really stuck out to me on page 173, and I kind of summarize as I go into the quote. So she basically said, in our current society, it was then in 2001, very similar here in 2025. We as intelligent beings, when we become adults and we become responsible for anything that we want to invest in, we learn the facts, we research. We know what we want. When we go to buy a car, we know what we want, we know what we can afford, we know what kind of warranty we want, we know the features that we want, we know the features that we would not, that we can give on and say, well, like, I really wanted a sunroof, but I don't have to have the sunroof, but I gotta have the leather seats. We do it for everything. But she was saying that, You know, those foundational relationships that foster self-esteem are connected to why, when it comes to romantic relationships, we so easily give on things that are absolutely necessary, or we don't even sit down and consider, like, here are some things that are just a non-negotiable. Like, it would just completely break my spirit to be with someone who does not this, who does not do this, or who does not do that, or who does not value this, or who does not value that. But how oftentimes women, especially, um, like certain like non-negotiable things somehow are out the window. There's a compromise there. And so she kind of talked about evaluation. So on page 172, she said, um, to be capable of to be capable of critically evaluating a partner, we would need to be able to stand back and look critically at ourselves, at our needs, desires, and longings. And she said of her own life experience, it was difficult for me to really take out a piece of paper and evaluate myself to see if I was able to give the love I wanted to receive. And even more difficult to make a list of the qualities I wanted to find in a mate. I listed 10 items. And then when I applied the list to men I had chosen as potential partners, it was painful to face the discrepancy between what I wanted and what I had chosen to accept. We fear that evaluating our needs and then carefully choosing partners will reveal that there is no one for us to love. Most of us prefer to have a partner who is lacking. Most of us prefer to have a partner who is lacking than no partner at all. What becomes apparent is that we may be more interested in finding a partner than in knowing love. And I put a whew beside that, WHEW, because basically the last line, we may prefer to have a partner rather than knowing love. And to be honest with you, in today's day and time, you really have to almost come to grips with which is actually what is more important to you, just having somebody, just having a partner, or actually knowing love. And I it's just so thorough. It is not like, oh, you need to raise your standards and you need to have all these things in your list. It's like, no. What are the essentials of what love really looks like when it is fleshed out? Are you willing to become that? And are you willing to be honest about what your needs are? And just really quickly, I will say, just in my own transparency, one of the things that happens when you are a single woman who is of a certain age, people will assume, especially and I have learned to like not be offended because if anything, maybe it's a compliment. I'm just gonna take it as a compliment. People will be like, "Oh, you're single because you're probably single because you're too picky," kind of thing. But one thing that I have learned over the maybe the past probably the past 10 years or so, when I reflect back like on like kind of what Bell Hooks was just saying, like if people knew, you know, not putting my business out there at all, which I don't really have much in this area, but if people really knew, I think if people knew what my list was, and if I went back and compared some of the non-essentials just as a woman and as a woman of God and as a woman of standard that I, was willing to like forego to be in a bond with certain people in years past, they probably wouldn't think that I was so picky. But it's like when you start reading something like this, you realize like you're not picky enough. Like you think you're picky and you're not picky enough necessarily with other people, but even with your own self. Like are there ways in which like certain things that will be essential to my success in a relationship? Like, are there certain things that would be essential that I have been willing to like say like, oh well, that's really not that important. It's like it just steps on your toes. Like I don't care how great you think you are and how great you think your list is of who would be suitable for you. It's gonna step on toes. So if you're a single woman out there, I know your standard. If you're a Christian, I know your standard is the Word of God and all of the things. And some of the fleshing out of like, oh wait, this is an essential need. This is something that I probably should not, act like it's not a big deal. This book is probably gonna enhance that. It's not gonna make you think that you're being too picky. I would just say it like that. All right, a couple more. Page 177. She says cultural acceptance of this change shows that we are all capable of shifting our paradigms, the foundational ways of thinking and doing things that become habitual. And she was just saying that certain things our culture has intentionally shifted because it's convenient, and so she's basically encouraging us to say that certain ways that we have been socialized, especially when it comes to quote unquote romance, like that can be shifted. Like we don't. That's just not. It doesn't just have to be that way. That we don't know the difference between like a true love that has depth and romance. Like it really takes us talking about these things and teaching, learning for ourselves, and being willing to see where we have been wrong, and then continuing to teach the next generation, and fostering an environment where men and women um, are not afraid to talk about these things. And I believe where we do not see having certain ethics and certain standards when it comes to mental, emotional, and spiritual health, when we don't see those things as impossible. I think a lot of times people don't talk about what they really believe like openly, because it really doesn't, society, even in the church, doesn't really make you feel like certain things are possible. We've kind of accepted the status quo in a lot of ways, when instead of accepting it, we need to be the ones to change it. So I love, that's really what I love the most about chapter 10. There are so many good quotes in this chapter. But one of the main ones you shared, Miss Helena, basically that l- true love does not always lead to happily ever after, and even when it does, it to sustain it, it will still take work. To me, that's a great summary. That was really a great one-liner to describe exactly what this chapter was all about. Um, and I'll close this chapter out with a great quote that she shared from Thomas Merton, who wrote, "We discover our true selves in love. Many of us are not ready to accept and embrace our true selves, particularly when living with integrity alienates, alienates us from our familiar world." So I love that, because it just seems like such a call to um, like be cool with the fact that you know better. I think if nothing else, I feel like this chapter, it ends in a way where it's like you're not a weirdo to know and to feel and to think that there has to be more than what is like promoted as what this thing is. It's like we know a lot of times, even as people who are believers, we know like what scripture says, but when it comes to actually walking it out and fleshing it out, we don't always see the best examples. And that's not to, you know, finger point or blame anyone. We have not, and one of the reasons we haven't seen the best examples is not because they're not out there. Is those voices have not necessarily been amplified, because it does not match popular culture. So I just love that this book really encourages amplifying voices and stories that will highlight the fact that it is possible to have a greater standard when it comes to love, when it comes to the romantic aspect of love. All right, we'll switch over to chapter 11, but before I do that, um, you can let me know in the chat, Miss Helena, if you have any quotes that I missed from chapter 10 that you want to share before I flip over to chapter 11. I'll give her a second. It's a little bit delayed on her end. So let me know if there's anything else, and I will move on. You did put settling is not a good idea. Thank you for reaffirming that. All right, any quotes for you? Anything else from chapter 10?
Can you hear me or no?
Okay, page 188. Yes.
Um, at the bottom of page 188. Okay. Mm-hmm. Um, she says, intensely connecting with another soul, we are made bold and courageous, using that fearless will to bond and connect as a catalyst for choosing and committing ourselves to love. We are able to love truly and deeply, to give and receive a love that lasts, a love that is stronger than death. And I don't know what what triggered in me was how a lot of times married couples or couples um have been together, 30, 40, 50, whatever years, 60, 70, whatever years, and one goes home to be with the Lord, and then the other one goes right behind. That's what I don't know. I just thought of, that right there when that little section there where she says, um, a love that lasts is a love that is stronger than death. I don't know. I just thought about that. So that's it. That's the only thing I wanted to add that stuck out for me.
Okay. And just as you just spoke, we're going to move into chapter 11 then. Thank you for sharing that one. And chapter 11 is loving into life and death. And so, appropriately, she does talk about that correlation. So we'll move on into chapter 11 then. Thank you for that quote. If there's anyone else in the chat who has been reading with us, and I see some new folk just jumped on in Facebook, or even if you're on YouTube, I can see your comments. Go ahead and add your favorite quotes from the last couple of chapters in the chat. And even if we have moved on past that chapter or those chapters, your comments will still be there for those who will watch the replay, and they'll also still be there for those of us who are on now, and we can go back and look at those quotes. So thank you for sharing that. Moving into chapter 11, loving into life and death. And this was a really good chapter as well. And it was not morbid. It wasn't what I was maybe thinking it was gonna be when I read it. I mean, it talked about death, obviously, but I like the fact that she talks about it in a way that is motivational for the way that we live. So, page 191. Um, She talks about Fromm, who's also an author that wrote about love frequently in this book. And so Fromm is one of the authors that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to check out some Fromm after I'm finished with this book. Um, I think I'm trying to think if this was, yeah. She said, on his deathbed, Eric Fromm asked a beloved friend why we prefer love of death to love of life. Why the human race prefers necrophilia to biblia, bibliophilia. Necrophilia to biophilia. Coming from Fromm, this question was merely rhetorical, as he had spent his life explaining our cultural failing to fully embrace the reality that love gives life meaning. Um, so when I read that quote, and I read that he was on his deathbed when he made the quote, I thought about how people who do great things in their community, people who love and serve within their family, or even one that we see a lot when it comes to celebrities. Like, sometimes it'll be a celebrity that like literally begged, or like, for example, well, no, I won't give that example. I'll just say it like this. Literally artists or, actors or community activists, people who like literally begged for support. People who labored, forever for their support. And certain powers that be would never affirm them. But all of a sudden, when that person passes, oh my gosh, I love them. And but they begged you for 30 years to acknowledge what they were doing and to amplify it, to give them a leg up, to support. Didn't say a word, but suddenly, oh, there were, yeah, this person was the greatest of all time and such, but and on social media it's like in 25 years or 20, let's say 20 years of seeing like certain people on Facebook and then over the past decade to 12 years on Instagram, never mentioned a particular artist, never reposted their music, never, got excited and posted when they were online doing stuff, or never, traveled to go to their concert, but they were your favorite artists. But they were not your most popular mainstream person, and so you didn't feel cool when unless you didn't feel cool, like promoting them. But then they died, and suddenly, anyway, I thought about that when I read that quote. That a lot of authors, even is like they labor just so hard and just to get you to listen while they're living. But who cares? Who are you to tell me? And I don't care what you're doing because I'm trying to do something and I can't do it. So I'm for sure not about to support you doing something. But then all of a sudden, when they die, their books are flying off the racks. But anyway, I thought about that. um, I'll move on to a couple more quotes and then I'll toss it over to you. But that just came to my mind. Like we really are only obsessed with when we can't, when something is not tangible to us anymore. That's when we want it. On page 192, our cultural obsession with death consumes energy that could be given to the art of living. The worship of death is a central component of patriarchal thinking, whether expressed by men, whether expressed by women or men. Then she skips down and says, quoting from another author, Western civilization has preferred love of death to love of life to the very extent that its religious traditions have preferred redemption to creation, sin to ecstasy, and individual introspection to cosmic awareness and appreciation. Um, and she goes on to promote creation grounded spirituality that is life affirming. Um, and then it says, we move away from this worship of death by challenging patriarchy, creating peace, working for justice, and um, embracing a love ethic. Like we and ooh, and I will give this example because I don't have to get into it too much. When I read that one, I thought about how even politically, how polarized we are politically, because like people say, I guess I've heard one activist say like we should care about life from the womb to the tomb. So politically, how polarized we are when it comes to what part of life is actually the most important and what part of life are we willing to fight for. For people who believe that, unborn babies' lives are important into preserving. Do those are those same people just as passionate about the risk of a teenage boy walking out, from his home with a hood on, eating a pack of Skittles. Like, so it's kind of like we pick our things, but at the same time, are we all about what is life affirming? And I thought about at the beginning of this, um, I believe our very first session. It's so interesting how at the very beginning of this, I don't even remember what quote it was that I read in the book, but it made me think of Micah 6:8. Um, you know, the scripture, the verse that talks about, um, and I'll read it in a second. That talks about doing doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly. And I was reminded of that verse again today, and how even this chapter where it talks about thinking about death in a life affirming way, a way that is actually going to fuel the way we live. When we really think about an ethic for that, when it comes to the decisions that we make individually, within our families, within our churches, our communities, our country, our nation. Um, can we say that it all falls under that category when you're thinking about love, when you're thinking about preserving life, and when you thinking about dignity in death? Is our true ethic to um to do justice, to be just? Is our biblical as is our social ethic to love mercy, and is our social ethic to walk humbly? Because when you talk about walking humbly, well, there's some different aspects to that. When we talk about when we consider the fact that there are multiple perspectives to take into account when we are making decisions, and that not just one perspective is most important. Not just, the perspective of the rich is not the most important, not just the perspective of the poor. Like, everyone's perspective is important, but at the end of it, do we feel good about saying, can we say that our ethic and our motive and our way of being and our way of interacting, the way we think about things and people, the way we think about the world, is it in a way that is just, or is it in a all about me as long as it benefits me? Is it in a way of mercy? In all that to say, just that whole, just thinking about those three things, it does make me think, you know, it's a good kind of a framework to think about when it's like, am I living in a way that is life affirming? Am I living in a way that I guess the way I treat people, the way I think about people, is it giving them the kind of dignity that where if they were not here tomorrow, I could say, I felt like I walked uprightly in regard to that person. You know what I mean? So that really stuck out to me when with that series of quotes. Um, let's see. The last one I'll share, and before I flip it over to you, Miss Helena, is that I love on page 195. because this is something that I feel like universally we all deal with in different ways, and depending on our background, makeup, theology, it may impact us differently. But when they talk about fear, on page 195 at the bottom, and she says, when worship of death is rooted in fear, it does not enable us to live fully or well. And she goes back to Thomas Merton, and a quote that he made is, if we become obsessed with the idea of death hiding and waiting for us in ambush, we are not making death more real, but life less real. Our life is divided against itself. It becomes a tug of war between the love and the fear of itself. Death then operates in the midst of life, not as the end of life, but rather as the fear of life. To live fully, we would need to let go of our fear of dying. That fear can only be addressed by the love of living. Um, you know, that just, made me think about the whole YOLO, you only live once thing, even though, my belief system is not necessarily that, but we only live this life once, and is a fear. It's fear or always trying to stay safe, prohibiting living life to the fullest that God has called us to. So this chapter was, I went into it a little leery because I didn't know where she was gonna go, and it's actually there's quite a few more quotes, but I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to you. Miss Selena, I'll go ahead and flip over to you to see what your thoughts are for this chapter 11 here.
Okay. Let's take these out. Hear myself double. Yeah, there was a trigger for me when she talked about life-threatening illnesses. Um, where she says, loving makes it possible for us to change our worship of death to a celebration of life. Like when we have some type of health scare or something like that, we start to really think about life and love and what's really important and, things like that. So that was a trigger for me because I've had a life-threatening, um, you know, uh, challenge before. And yeah, you definitely, I do recall hearing inside myself um, to live, stop planning to die and plan to live. So that was a trigger for me. And at the top of 197, she says, love empowers us to live fully and die well. Death becomes then not an end to life, but a part of living. And of course, I thought about eternal life. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting or eternal life. So that just popped out for me. At the bottom of 197 says, death is not a stranger to me. He is an old acquaintance. She's quoting from it looks like Kubler-Ross is who she's quoting from there at the bottom there. And she says, it takes courage to befriend death. We find that courage in life through loving. So she ties it back into courage and loving in life. And then at the top of 198, she says, our collective fear of death is a disease of the heart. And she has at the top, love is the only cure. And I thought about what a lot of people call the love chapter in the scriptures, 1 Corinthians 13:7, love conquers all, is what that triggered for me, that jumped out for me. In the bottom of 198, she says, when we love every day, we do not need the imminent threat of sure death to be true to ourselves. Living with awareness and clarity of mind and heart, we are able to embrace the realization of our dying in a manner that allows us to live more fully because we know death is always with us. Um, that's an interesting thought, I thought, when I read that. And at the bottom, I love at the bottom of page 199 when she says when she was a little girl, her mother talk with ease about the possibility of death. And often, when we were put off for tomorrow, the things that could be done today, she said her mother would remind them that life is not promised. I remember hearing that too many times too, coming up too as a youngster. Um, this was her way of urging us to live life to the fullest, to live so that we would be without regret. You know, that's so important to live, yeah, without regret. And I'm going to close with this last one that stuck out for me at the bottom of 201. She says, love invites us to grieve for the dead as ritual of mourning and as celebration. You know, so just like, you know, again, that, you know, trigger for me is that there's a season and a time for everything. So there's a time to die, a time to live, time to celebrate, time to not celebrate, you know. So there's a time and a season for everything. And what I'm hearing inside right now, there's always a time for love. So I'm gonna end it with that one.
All right. Thank you so much for those. Um, yeah, a lot of things about this particular chapter really resonate. So we had some of the same some similar thoughts on some of the quotes. Um, and just rereading on 205, that last one that says, by learning to love, we learn to accept change. Without change, we cannot grow. Our will to grow in spirit and truth is how we stand before life and death, ready to choose life. And so, um, again, that's one of the reasons why this chapter actually exceeded my expectations. Um, because it really is a call to really embrace life in such a way that death does not the the inevitability, I guess, of death does not prohibit the way we live, but at the same time, it it it, it is approached in such a view that it is only our focus, at that time, basically. So I really like the fact that you're encouraged to take advantage of the time that you have, because you don't necessarily know how much time you have, but at the same time, you're encouraged to not allow fear to, put a damper on, how you can actually live and enjoy life. So, great chapter. Um, Moving on, we're almost done. Healing, redemptive love, which is chapter 12. Which is chapter 12. Lot of quotes from this chapter as well for me. Um, it's obviously the book is written it with a particular cadence, and you can feel that the book is wrapping up when it's coming towards this part talking about healing. But I love how I'm starting to hear echo. Y'all let me know in the YouTube comments or in the Facebook comments if you are catching an echo as well, or if that is just on my end. I want to make sure that even though we've been going for an hour, it's not in the recording if possible, because it was pretty bad last week. Okay, I see a quote here. Let me share a quote here. I don't hear an echo on FB. Oh, excellent. Thank you. All right, and I have a quote here that I didn't see before. It says, my favorite quote was also on page 181. True love does not always lead to happily ever after, and even when it does, sustaining love still takes work. All right, thank you so much for leaving that quote. It sounds like that one is a unanimous favorite from us from that, I believe that was chapter 10. Thank you for leaving your comment. And for those of you who are still with us, you still got a chance. We're going to wrap up with these last two chapters. And I think we're doing pretty well on time to say that we did some of the things that we were able to do at the beginning and discuss these last couple chapters very thoroughly. But I was saying, I love the cadence of the book. You can feel that, is wrapping up here. And the fact that, we've talked about all of these things, but we've been, most people in some way or another reading this have been challenged. Um,
Okay.
One of the things that I
Um,
love about the way the book is written and the way she addresses things is, she does share some of her stories, but it's it's like you're challenged to know that realistically, it is work to um, just recalibrate the way we have been taught to think about love in every context. It is work, but there is hope, and the work does matter, and it is worth it. I like that, and I'm just kind of sharing, I guess, the way I'm coming away from these last couple of chapters. I like that. It feels like it just basically encourages. Well, I would say I feel encouraged to um, reflect, and I'm a very reflective person. I think by nature, but at the same time, in being challenged in different ways to examine certain things, I love that I can also like appreciate just my own growth, from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago. I can appreciate my own growth, and I can see in here from a lot of the things that she talked about. There was just so many places where I felt like, oh my gosh, like yes, like 3 years ago, I could see like personal experience where I was learning certain things from experience, but then to turn around and read, you know, and move into like the healing chapter to basically it's like you can reflect on your own life in a positive way, but also come away with things that you can work on, things that you can be a part of fostering in your community, but also like some tools, some tidbits to hold on to when it comes to healing and growing and being shown that healing is a process of growth. That's something that we know, we hear it said, but it doesn't always mean that one, we understand the work and the time that goes into healing in the area of love, which encompasses all of life. Um, but when we go into it knowing that we don't, kind of like you said before, to everything there is a season, we don't always know exactly how our seasons are going to work and how we're going to come around to learning more and embracing healing. But just knowing that it is possible, and knowing that the work that we do on ourselves and the work that we're willing to do in our communities, that it matters and it does make a difference. So we know that Bell Hooks passed a few years ago, and this book was written 20 something years ago. But the fact that she was willing to study this, basically to work on herself and her own experience in life, but was willing to commit her words, her experiences, and her thoughts, her research to putting it down on paper so that we could read it. So this healing chapter is very encouraging. I'll just say it like that. But I love that it's also like calling us to do the work, basically. All right, on page 209, she says, no matter what has happened in our past, when we open our hearts to love, we can live as if born again. Not forgetting the past, but seeing it in a new way, letting it live inside us in a new way. We go forward with the fresh insight that the past can no longer hurt us. Or if our past was one in which we were loved, we know that no matter the occasional presence of suffering in our lives, we will return always to remembered calm and bliss. Mindful remembering lets us put the broken bits and pieces of our hearts together again. This is the way healing begins. So I really love that chapter. I mean, I really love that quote as an opening to the chapter. A few others that really stood out for me that I would like to share this evening. Um, I really I like how she addresses that she got to a point in her life where she was willing to talk more about love because she wanted to know more, because she was studying and she wanted to have a genuine experience in her own life. And I love that she's transparent about her experiences. And I do feel like that in itself is a ministry. The way she was willing to talk about her experiences. And she says on page 213, um, although we all want to know love, we talk about the search for true love as though it is always and only a solitary quest. I am disturbed by the weighty emphasis on self in so much New Age writing on the topic and in our culture as a whole. When I would talk about my yearning for a loving partner, people told me over and over that I did not need anyone else. They would say I did not need a companion and or a circle of loved ones to feel complete, that I should be complete inside myself. While it is definitely true that interconnectedness and a sense of fulfillment can be there whether or not we commune in love with others, it is equally meaningful to give voice to that longing for communion. Life without communion in love with others would be less fulfilling, no matter the extent of one's self love. I just thought that was so valuable that she shared that because that remains true, you know, today. We are not, um, we don't have to, going back to the other chapters, just settle for having a partner if we would like to experience true love. But at the same time, um, I guess the coping mechanism for some people who are seeking true love, but also for those people who already have it and they just don't know what to say for the people who don't. To say like, oh, you just, as long as you love yourself, you will be all right. And like, you do need to love yourself so that you can know yourself and so that you can be, the kind of partner that you desire and also have the standards that will allow you to connect with that kind of partner without compromise. But the fact that there is something, there's a reason why, God made us communal. There's a reason why he, came up with the institution of marriage. There's a reason why he created us the way he did, so that we do even desire that. So there's value in it, in the fact that sometimes our only go-to is as long as you love yourself. It really kind of is just a testament of the fact that we still have a lot to learn and a lot of work to do, to see the kinds of partnerships and communities that we want to see in the world, and that's okay. The fact that we can acknowledge it is the thing. Um, it really stood out to me on 214 that she mentioned codependency because that's something we read about and talked about in our group. That we read when we read the Lisa Romano book. I like that she differentiates between codependency and interdependency on page 214. While terms like codependency, which came out of programs for individual self recovery, slightly show the ways in which excessive dependency can be unhealthy, especially when it is marked by the support of addictive behavior, we still need to talk about healthy interdependency. Um, and, flip down to the bottom of it when she says acceptance, care, knowledge, and responsibility. That is love in action. Acceptance, care, knowledge, and responsibility. That is love in action. Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. So I think those quotes really pull out the things that stuck out to me the most from this chapter. I see a quote here. Ms. Alina, you said I like how Bell Hooks mentions we have to ask ourselves, can we love others the way we want to be loved? Yeah, I love that accountability there. Like she does it in such a loving and gracious fashion. Um, all right, I'm gonna flip over to you, and you can let me know, Miss Helena, if you, well, what your quotes are for this chapter.
Okay. Alrighty. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. Um, the things that I highlighted here, to choose growth is to embrace a love that heals. That's something that I um underlined and highlighted. And I think you mentioned this, the presence of pain in our lives is not an indicator of dysfunction. And at the top of the next page, 211, it says in functional families, individuals face conflict, contradictions, times of unhappiness and suffering, just like dysfunctional families do. The difference lies in how these issues are confronted and resolved and how everyone copes in moments of crisis. Healthy families resolve conflict without coercion, shaming, or violence. So, yeah, the difference between healthy and unhealthy here, or dysfunctional and functional, I like how she differentiates. Um, she has here in the same page on 211 in the family, a revolutionary way of self-discovery. John Bradshaw offers this definition. A functional, healthy family is one in which all the members are fully functional. I love all of this functional, and all the relationships between the members are fully functional. And then I'm skipping down a little bit. It says a functional family is the healthy soil out of which individuals can become mature human beings. Wow. In the functional family, self-esteem is learned and there is a balance between autonomy and dependency. So you talked about, the codependency and, dependency and yeah, yeah. And 213, I'm gonna jump over. She says, although we all want to know love, we talk about the search for true love as though it is always and only a solitary quest. She says she's disturbed by the weighty emphasis on self in so much new age writing on the topic and in our culture as a whole. Yeah, she talks a lot, Bell Hooks, in here about community and communal and bringing in everyone and not isolating. And, you know, there's an old school saying about poke that eye out. You hear a lot, if you hear a lot of people saying I, me, they need to poke that eye out. But yeah, yeah, so that's what stuck out for me. And yeah, yeah. I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Janetta.
All right. Thank you for those. Um, we, I believe, hit that chapter really well, and we're ready to close out now with the last chapter, which is chapter 13. Thank y'all who are joining now and those who've been with us throughout. We did say last week that we go a little bit longer so that we could wrap up and close out. And so we're just about done. Destiny when angels speak of love. Now, here is where I was like, let me pull out, let me get my, pull my Bible out and reread a couple of things. I believe Bell Hooks was very poetic in a lot of ways when she talked about the story of Jacob. So there were some things that I was like, let me go back and read like what were the actual details of what it is that had happened in that story. But there were so many great connections that were made in this chapter that I felt like it's definitely worth a read if you want to really to see even more richly some of the connections that are made. It is definitely worth a read to read in the Bible the actual story of Jacob and the wounding of Jacob's hip and that whole encounter and what came with it. It's definitely worth a read. Excuse me, but I do love the analogy and the some of the comparisons that are made with us in our journey. And so I'll read a couple of my favorite quotes from this chapter. And on page 228 is probably one of my favorite quotes where she says, as long as a man remains in a state of psychological development in which his mother is the most important woman to him, he cannot mature as a man. A man's eros, his capacity for love and relatedness, must be freed from attachment to the mother and able to reach out to a woman who is his contemporary. Otherwise, he remains a demanding, dependent, childish person. And that was a quote that she actually got from another author. That she said someone named John Stanford, who wrote the book The Man Who Wrestled with God. Um, so she's contending, even using that quote,
Mm.
that the fact that she's saying that based on what we read in the Bible about Jacob, that some psychological growth had taken place in his life through his journey in the wilderness when he left his family. So, yeah, that's kind of where what she's alluding to, that there is some growth that happens for adults, but especially a grown man when he's able to detach from his mother. However amazing his mother has been or not, when he's able to detach from his mother. So when you come on, Miss Helena, I'd love to hear your take on that in a practical way, from your own experience. If you agree with that statement, I'd love to know. All right, page 228, it says men who are positively attached to their mothers are able to balance that bond, negotiating dependency and autonomy, and can extend it to affectional bonds with other women. I very much heard that, said before, in some ways through attachment theory. For those of you who maybe have studied attachment theory, you know that the way we attach comes from our experiences attaching with our caregivers as infants and as small children. So she hits on attachment theory, which is a study all in and of itself. We could read a book on attachment theory individually, or even in the book club. On the psychology side of things, but she's pulling the psychology and the theology together here. She's talking about Jacob's attachment. Um, and just, yeah, if you read it, what we know about Jacob's relationship with his mother and some of the things that occurred, at her prompting, we not we not we're not, I guess, mischaracterizing Rebecca, but it's definitely worth a read. Um, on page 228, also she says a man who has loved in childhood has already learned healthy practices of individuation. As Jacob labors for Rachel, making wrong choices and difficult decisions, he grows and matures. By the time they wed, he is able to be a loving partner.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Man, I had a lot towards the second half of this chapter. I had a lot of quotes. Um, but I'm gonna move past that. On page 231, she said, she starts to talk about shame. I, I don't want to. There's so many I want to read about Jacob, but I'm gonna move on. She talks about shame. In Coming Out of Shame by Gershon Kaufman and Lev Raphael, she says, shame is the most disturbing emotion we ever experience directly about ourselves. For in the moment of shame, we feel deeply divided from ourselves. Shame is like a wound made by an unseen hand in response to defeat, failure, or rejection. At the same moment that we feel most disconnected, we long to embrace ourselves once more, to feel reunited. Shame divides us from ourselves, just as it divides us from others. And because we still yearn for reunion, shame is deeply disturbing. That really stuck out to me. And what I think is interesting is just my observation of how she even talks about her own experiences. You can tell that even when she talks about like past relationships, where things occurred that were detrimental to her, she still speaks of the situation in the people. And it's like, how do you even do that? It's possible, but I don't even know how to explain it well. She speaks about the situations and the people in a way that still give them dignity as human beings. And she's still like, it's like she pulls out the things that were problematic about herself and in the person who was her partner, obviously without naming the person. But she's still, you can tell she's very conscious of framing things in a way that characterize, I guess, with shame, while at the same time acknowledging that shame existed within the relationship. So when I read that quote, I just thought about how she has handled things, how she's written about and spoken about her own scenarios throughout this book. You can tell she has an awareness um, of the presence of shame in a lot of those situations. Um, I read that quote really because I appreciate that she talks about basically shaming people when they're able to actually name their woundedness on page 232. She says, the belittling of anyone's attempt to name a context within which they were wounded, were made a victim, is a form of shaming. It is psychological terrorism. Shaming breaks our hearts. And, that resonated with me because it made me think about how a lot of times it's hard for us to listen to people's stories, um, especially if you are a deeply empathetic person, because you can almost feel the shame that they feel for them, and it's unpleasant. It's hard to sit in, and so sometimes we rush people past being able to feel what they feel and understand or explain or explore whatever the context was because we are uncomfortable with it. And so I like the fact that um, she addresses belittling people for being able to speak on situations that cause them shame because they are needing to heal. And and I just thought about even in our communities, in our churches, in our families, um, sometimes we don't want people to talk about things, or we don't talk about things because we're trying to actually help. We're not actually trying to belittle someone's shame, but we want to rush people past that space or that place of feeling um, those horrible feelings. And so in that, sometimes we end up silencing each other instead of allowing each other to give expression. And then, and we've seen it online probably 100 times. Sometimes when those conversations cannot be had, when people do not feel that they can express, or they do not feel like they can unburden themselves in a way that does not cause further shame, um, it, it ends up it ends up bad. You know, either people like isolate, or they self medicate, or or they hurt others because it's sitting there, and there's almost no escape from it. It's just brooding. And so I like the fact that she encourages us to be able to sit in those things and be safe spaces for people, but also encouraging us to be a safe space for ourselves, to allow ourselves and to know that like we have a right to heal. We have a right to be able to speak on things in a way that will allow us that healing and that growth, that place, that space for healing to occur. And so um, that's one of the reasons why it is a gift, and it takes skill, and it takes intentionality, even in ministering to other people, or even in being transparent to share our stories. It takes some intentionality, and it shouldn't be done lightly, because as we're processing the things we've experienced, especially it's been with other people. It's like we want to be able to adjust things in a way that that still allows all parties to have um, some dignity. I guess you can't have dignity for someone else, but you can handle people, even people who have hurt you, with with the dignity of humanity and understanding, coming to a place of understanding the things that people deal with. And she addresses that at the bottom of page 232. We need to speak our shame and our pain courageously in order to recover. Addressing woundedness is not about blaming others. However, it does allow individuals who have been and are hurt to insist on accountability and responsibility, both from themselves and from those who were the agents of their suffering, as well as those who bore witness. Constructive confrontation aids our healing. So those really, those were the ones that really stuck out for me. And they actually gave me words to why. Like there's a lot of things that I feel very I guess responsible about speaking on in a public space. Now, if there's something where I'm speaking to someone one on one, I'm encouraging someone, or if I'm in my own healing process therapeutically, or in discipleship in a small group of people, or even speaking to parties involved, I'm very careful, and you know for a long time, I felt like, oh, that's just not being transparent. But really, what it is this kind of gave me some words for why it's important how we address things. Because when it comes to healing, it is really not a blame game, but it really is a place of accountability and responsibility. So those were mine. I'm sure there are plenty others I could probably say, even though these are the last couple of pages. Half of the book is underlined and highlighted. I'm going to switch it over and let Miss Helena share her last couple of ones for chapter 13, which is the last one. Before I switch over, I will say that it was no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm gonna switch over. I'm gonna go ahead and switch over, and you can let me know. Let us know what your favorites are. Also, you guys, I'm still checking the chat. This is our last week on Bell Hooks, all about love. Make sure you leave your favorite quotes so someone can come check them out. All right, I'm switching over to Miss Helena right now.
Okay. All righty. Um, Back to your um wanting to know what do I think about the like you said, the attachment theory. I agree that there has to be um yeah, a detachment. And it's interesting. Um, I have two sons and one daughter. My daughter's in between the two sons, and she has said to me that I think as a culture, but definitely in our family, that we raise our daughters and we coddle our sons. And so I would have to agree that there has to be, I'm not gonna say that he's not a man, like yeah, not mature, like maybe not a mature man if he doesn't, lead. Because the word talks about leaving and cleaving. I just had this conversation a couple of days ago with someone else. Um, but yeah, I would have to say that I do believe that in order for the man to cleave to the wife, he has to leave from the parents, and stuff like that. So I totally believe that. And you just read, Danetta, what I had um, highlighted a lot here, reading here. It says that we are all wounded at times, and a great many of us remain wounded in the place where we would know love. We carry that wound from childhood into adulthood on into old age. She, again, like you said, she talks about the story of Jacob, reminds us that embracing our wound is the way to heal. So, that confronting and embracing. And yes, it might be uncomfortable and we don't want to deal with it, but that's the only way that we're going to heal is if we confront it. And she talks about here, he accepts his vulnerability, talking about Jacob. And so, yeah, it's true. We have to go head on with what makes us uncomfortable, or it's going to be hounding us and riding us, as old school says, it'll be riding us for the rest of our lives unless we confront it. Um, and we have to come to grips with it. And we don't have to do it alone, go to God first. Always, he has to be first. Then, can go to a therapist or, in community or whatever, to help with it. But we gotta address these things because a lot of wounded individuals are bringing their wounds into all of their relationships, um, you know, that they haven't began the process of getting healed from them. And so then they're jumping and sometimes contaminating other people along the way with their wounds. Because, some wounds, right, are what do you call contagious, right? Some are not, some are contagious. And so, yeah, it's so important for us to address and confront whatever it is that we need healing. And then we have to be able to identify it. So that's why it's so important um, to have alone time and have isolation time, meaning not to isolate forever, but just have that alone time to be honest with ourselves and with God, how to get the healing and process going. So that's what stuck out for me. um, yeah, you read the part about all individuals who are genuinely seeking well-being within a healing context, realize that it's important to that process not to make being a victim a stance of pride or a location from which to simply blame others. I think about that was a trigger for me for people who say for instance, I'll just say there's some single parents who wear single parenting as a badge. Like, it's been for generations and generations and generations that they've been single parents. And that it just triggered a memory for me right there about some people wearing certain things. And I'm not picking on single parents or anything like that. I'm just saying there's just certain things that people will hold on and like wear it like a badge, and that's why that stuck out for me. But it's just a lot. This was great, um a read, and I'm sure that I'm probably gonna go back and read it again, believe it or not. And I'm just like that. It's something I really, really enjoy. I'll go back through it again. And so I just want to say thank you for inviting me to read with you all. It's been a pleasure, and I really enjoy it. Enjoyed it, and enjoy the book club. So come everybody, join, and get the book All About Love by Bell Hooks. Get the book, get the book. I'm turning it back over to you, and again, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Talina, for sharing your last couple of quotes there. I yeah, this is this has been a great journey. I'm reading this book, and I'm glad that this was one that I read with others. Um, Even some of those who do not necessarily write in the chat have shared that the book has been a blessing to them, or that it has triggered some things for them to think about, and obviously has touched on such an important topic. So I'm very thankful that you and so many others who have been a part of this with us, either every week or just here and there, or some people are going to be reading the book for the next couple of weeks on their own. So I appreciate you being a part of having something to come to, just to see how we finished up discussing the book. Um, One of the last things I'll say about the book before we close out for the evening and for this book is that I just love the connections that are made between childhood experiences, um, the actual the way we are socialized, the way our culture is right now, and basically I love the connection between understanding the past, becoming more aware about what the present is and how it became that way, and what you can do, like what can become important to you, so that you can see a difference in your own life in this area of love, in different facets of love in your own life, but how you can also foster that in the community, foster that in the people that you come in contact with, whether it's someone you see one time, in passing, or someone that you are in relationship with and you do life with. She gave an example of a priest in one of the chapters that she just felt saw her. I think it was in the last chapter. A priest who basically she did not express, her sorrow or anything she was going through as a teenager, but this priest saw her and blessed her with gave her a book that actually was a lifeline for her. I don't remember the name of the book, but it was by the author Rainer Maria Rilke, I think is how you say the last name. But when I saw that author, it made me think of a anchor memory for me as a teenager, which was Sister Act 2. The movie Sister Act 2, because as soon as I heard that name, I thought about the in that movie, the author Raina Maria Rilke was mentioned, and the book that I think he wrote, which is called Letters to a Young Poet. So I think one of the things that I really love about this book as well is how many odes she gave to creative people, and to people who maybe have unconventional dreams, or maybe people who have an unconventional timeline in life as to how things happen and when things happen and the sequence. And basically, she helps to normalize what is looked at as strange or weird or something's wrong. If you think deeply about things, if the way you operate is maybe a little bit different from most people around you, it's not always because something is wrong with you or that you're just going against the grain. I think of it on the spiritual plane, of the fact that sometimes God is doing a work in you that can be a blessing to not only you but your family and your generations, and maybe in your community. There's a level of deep work that has to happen within sometimes to make a difference. Of course, everything is not super deep. Everything's not deep work. Some things are just put your hand to the plow, be integral, care about others. But there are some things that are literally like uprooting the way things have been seen or done, so that changes can be made for such a time as this. And I just this book has just been so encouraging for people who want to do better, people who don't know why. Like, why can't I just be cool with the way stuff is commonly done? Why can't I just be cool with that? why am I seeking, something more, something deeper? I just love that she so personalized that journey by sharing her own, but at the same time, has called up and encouraged many others who will come behind her. And I'm sure many of her peers, just from seeing her interviews, I haven't seen many of her interviews, maybe two or three, but just from seeing the things that people write about her and some of the people's experiences with her, that is who she was to her generation when she was living, and that is who she is to a generation now who would take out the time to read one of her books. So I especially appreciate each of the book club members who have read through and stayed with us, but also for those of you who started out and you were excited about the book, you enjoyed it, but you haven't been able to come back and read through with us. This is a shout out to you. I hope you continue reading through. And we are closing out now. Bell Hooks, All About Love, and it has been an amazing journey. So thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in. Thank you again, Miss Helena. I'm gonna, as soon as I close this live session, I will be on the Facebook page, in YouTube, and on Substack with the link to Miss Helena's book, 40 Moments for Your Soul. I'm asking all of you who see this video to go to Amazon, purchase her book, and as you read through it, if you would be so kind as to leave her a comment on Amazon, because that does help. It helps for the Amazon algorithm to pick it up. I know many of us in the month of February were not patronizing Amazon. And now that we're in March, some of us have picked back up with getting our packages and things. Go ahead on over and support. Get that link. And Miss Helena, will you drop in the comments for me? Did you say there were other places besides Amazon where your book could be purchased? Because I know you said you worked with a particular company that made it digitally available. Let us know in the chat if there's any other place besides Amazon as well for people who want options. Let me know. That'll be in the chat for you guys to know if there's any other option besides Amazon. But you will see the link to her page pop up as soon as we get off of live. Thank you all for participating tonight, for all of the book club members that were with us live, either on Facebook, YouTube, or if you clicked in with us from Substack but you stayed anonymous. Thank you for your participation and for your insight and your input and just for being a part of the group. We will break from reading a book together, but I will continue to post at least weekly in our Facebook page. I'm sharing some things that'll be coming up. Our next book is scheduled to be fall. We'll do the fall book club again. I'm looking to do some interesting things even for summer. Right now, one of the things that I put out there that we are working through right now is trying to come together for an actual in-person meetup for our book club for the summer months. So that's coming up. For those of you who have not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, The Creative Scholar, and or A Dose of Danetta, make sure you do that because we'll be coming back here soon with season 2 of the Creative Scholar podcast. For those of you who were encouragement night attendees last year, and you've been saying like let me know, or those who were not here last year but you've been saying let me know, um, it has been delayed but not denied because we have some things in the works, and as soon as I have as soon as I have two particular elements of it nailed down, you'll be hearing really soon about the date for the encouragement night event. So those things are coming up. Have an amazing Lent season for those who are participating in Lent. Come March 20th, happy spring, and thank you so much for your time these past couple of weeks throughout Black History Month, and it's been great. I'm gonna let y'all go for the evening at 9:02. We got through it, 5 chapters in about 2 hours, and so I think we did great, and we can feel good about walking away saying that we read All About Love by Bell hooks. Thank y'all so much again for being here tonight. I look forward to seeing you again soon. If you haven't joined the book club yet, go ahead and join. You'll see us popping up on that page. And don't forget, last thing I'll say, so it can be in your memory, check the page for the link so that you can purchase Miss Helena's 40 Moments for Your Soul. Thanks so much again for joining tonight, and have an amazing evening, and we'll see you next time. Good night.